After 6 long, stressful months without a job, Beatrice finally landed a new one at a big company. The company had just taken over a rival and turned it into a branch. They were sending senior staff to the branch office to learn its systems. Melanie, from the finance department, was one of them. But from the moment she arrived, Melanie was treated coldly, sometimes even with open hostility, by the branch staff. That's why Beatrice was hired, to accompany and support Melanie there. Even though her role was just to assist Melanie, Beatrice felt excited. She saw it as the perfect chance to rebuild her career and fix her money problems. The salary was just decent, but at least she didn't have to stress out anymore when rent was due. But her first morning at the branch turned out to be nightmare. Because of unnecessary HR procedures that she had already completed at the head office, Beatrice ended up arriving 2 hours late to the finance floor. The finance supervisor greeted her with an annoyed tone. When she was introduced to the team, no one smiled or even looked at her. Her new desk turned out to be a dumping place for a mountain of documents. Next to her sat Melanie, looking pale, tired, and cold. Not at all the energetic woman Beatrice had been introduced during her 2 days orientation at the head office. Beatrice tried to rearrange the pile of papers on her desk to make more space to work, but one of the staff stopped her and said she shouldn't have moved the documents. After that, no one gave Beatrice real tasks to do or explained anything clearly. The supervisor told her to study the reports on her desk, but she couldn't make sense of them, because she still didn't really understand how the company's business worked. Her orientation at head office had only given her a general idea of the company and its structure. The details about her actual job were supposed to be learned once she started working at the branch. But whenever she asked questions, people either gave vague answers or just ignored her. At lunch, no one invited her, so she ran after Melanie and sat with her. That's when she found out the truth that, due to the company takeover, the employees at the branch were terrified of being laid off. They saw people sent by head office like Melanie, and now Beatrice, as spies, as threat. "We're pawns," Melanie said bitterly. "I was the first one thrown into the battlefield." Beatrice tried to comfort her, but Melanie just scoffed. As the days passed, Beatrice felt more and more isolated. Melanie often escaped to head office, leaving her alone in a hostile environment in the branch, surrounded by people who refused to train or support her. Most days, she was left with nothing to do. When she asked for work, they'd sometimes throw small tasks her way, but no one ever checked back in. It made her wonder if those tasks were even real. Still, she dragged them out, afraid of looking like she was useless. One time, she received a real task, but she couldn't figure it out. It was tied to the company's business, which was a completely new industry for her. She still needed someone to guide her, but no one seemed to care. As weeks went by, the tension at work kept growing, and so did her stress. The pressure really started to mess with her head. Then she got another task, tougher this time, but still something she should have been able to handle, given her experience. But her mind just froze, blank. She screwed up and got scolded. Beatrice felt crushed, ashamed, and disappointed in herself. That night at home, she cried hard, cursed herself, and even hit her own head out of frustration. After that, they stopped giving her anything important. Beatrice became a ghost in the office, ignored, even avoided. They only noticed her to throw snide comments or make fun of her. And they did it in sneaky ways, making it hard for her to push back. Besides, she had no idea how to fight back without making her situation worse. How did she even stand up to a whole office when she's all alone? She no longer had Melanie around for support. It was too much. She couldn't stand it. She dreaded going to work every morning. So, before leaving home, she stared into the mirror and whispered to herself, "They're just scared. You know how it feels to lose a job. Keep going." But by nightfall, her strength faded. Her reflection in the mirror looked tired and hopeless. Her daily pep talks lost their meaning, and eventually she stopped saying them altogether. Eerily, the darkness inside the office seemed to follow her home. Her home was actually just a cheap, modest rented room in an old 2-story boarding house. She'd been living here for over 6 months, ever since she lost her last job. It wasn't much, but it used to feel safe and even cozy. Now it felt off. Her room was the only one on the ground floor, sit between a big, old bathroom and a storage room. Other rented rooms and the tenants were upstairs. The quiet that once gave her peace now made her skin crawl. What used to feel like solitude now just felt like being alone and terrified. The silence grew deep and heavy. The air felt thick and damp, making it hard to breathe. And what terrified her the most was the feeling that she wasn't alone in her room, as if something nearby kept watching her, and worse, was pressing in on her. And the eeriness seemed to seep out of her room. The bathroom and storage room on either side of her room, which usually muffled noises from outside, now seemed to make their own sounds in the dead of night. Sometimes she heard the bathroom faucet turn on by itself, or things being dragged or moved around in the storage room. It could be nothing. I'm just becoming too sensitive because of all this stress, she thought, trying to calm herself down. For as long as she'd lived here, nothing weird had ever happened. But she didn't dare leave her room to investigate. The atmosphere inside was already eerie enough. She didn't want to make it worse by stepping into the silent, empty hall. So, she just buried her head under the pillow to block out the sounds. To make things worse, Beatrice's insomnia came back. She could barely sleep, and when she finally did, she was haunted by recurring nightmares. She dreamed of being chased by a dark, sinister creature. The dreams were so vivid that she could easily remember them during the day. Sleepless nights and nightmares left her feeling drained and sluggish. Then the stress at work made it even worse. Beatrice felt exhausted, physically and mentally, all the time. She started losing a lot of weight. She hated looking at the mirror because she looked very sick, drained, and thinner. Then came the worst. One day, Beatrice began to feel something terribly wrong. She couldn't move properly. Her limbs felt so heavy, like she was carrying a huge weight within her. She walked slower, weaker. Sometimes, the weight made her feel like she was going to fall down. She wasn't even 30, but her body felt ancient and worn out. Somehow, in her mind, she could picture it. A tall, dark, and heavy figure within her. Sometimes it looked like a giant statue. Other times like a huge coffin pressing down on her. She couldn't stand the sunlight anymore. It made her skin crawled and made her body trembled. And the mirror became a horror of its own. Her face was barely hers anymore. Gaunt, dry, aged, and darkened. Like a ghost's face. Her eyes, once bright, now looked sunken and hollow and unnatural. Like someone who had given up. Or worse, like someone who wasn't alive anymore. She became so embarrassed to meet anyone's eyes. She started to avoid meeting family and friends. She was worried someone would see her eyes and know something was wrong. If her own eyes scared herself, imagine what others would see. As a result, she became increasingly isolated. Not just at work, but also outside of work. She was devastated because she had no idea what to do. She didn't even understand what actually happened to her. Eventually, she started to believe maybe she was losing her mind. Maybe the black figure wasn't real. Maybe it was just madness. She prayed to Lord Jesus every night, begging for help. But things only got worse. Until one night, completely broken in mind and body, Beatrice sat at her dressing table and tried to pray again. She gazed into the mirror, locking eyes with her reflection, and what she saw sent chills down her spine. She slammed her eyes shut, held her hands tightly, and buried her face in her arms. This time, she would pray wholeheartedly. She believed God was her only solution. While Beatrice was deep in prayer, like fully immersed, she suddenly felt chills crawl up her skin. Goosebumps flared. Her head started feeling heavy, like it was expanding with pressure, forcing her to press her forehead harder against her crossed arms. Then something shifted. In her hair. She could feel it, like it was growing longer and wilder, spreading unnaturally, even though she'd recently cut it short. Her eyes were tightly shut, but somehow she could still see. Not with her regular eyes, but through her mind. Maybe this was what people called the spiritual eye. Through this new vision, Beatrice saw it. Something was rising from the nape of her neck. Not a full body, but a second head. A dark, terrifying head with wild, tangled hair that seemed to spread out like smoke. Its face, rotten, shadowy, terrifying. Its nose and mouth were unclear, but its dark, hollow eyes glowed with cold hatred. And yet, somehow, Beatrice knew that thing was an incredibly old woman. The head lifted itself high, as if to say, "I will not pray to your Jesus. I will not bow to him like you." Beatrice was shocked. That thing was real. She was not alone. There really was something within her. Something dark and sinister. She stopped praying and jumped into her bed, hiding her head under the pillow, her heart racing. She wanted to scream and escape, but where could she go? So she stayed hidden, whispering prayers, hoping it would go away. Her body couldn't hold on. And then, at some point, she suddenly fell asleep. Or maybe she actually passed out. When she woke up next morning, everything had changed. The heavy weight in her body was gone. Her limbs felt light again. Her face in the mirror now looked more alive. Her eyes had light again. A tiny spark of hope bloomed in her chest. It felt like she had come back from the dead. It was Sunday morning. She decided to go to church early, to pray with others and listen to the word of God. She wanted to be completely free from the darkness. But the fear, it didn't leave her completely. On Monday, she headed to head office and handed in her resignation. It wasn't just the pressure or the cruel co-workers. She was embarrassed of her confusion, of not knowing how to do her job. No one had ever helped or guided her. They just used her as a punching bag for their own fear and frustration. The office situation was so toxic, it gradually made her feel dumb, helpless, and small. It was mentally damaging for someone like her, who used to be smart, strong, and confident. And then, out of nowhere, the darkness crept in, trying to take over her soul when she was at her lowest. She needed money, sure, but losing her sanity over it? Not worth it. Even now, she didn't really understand what the darkness was, what it meant, why it came, or where it had come from. She also had to move out of her rented room that once had been her safe space but lately felt like a tomb. Later, an acquaintance from head office told her that the finance director, accompanied by few senior staff, had come to the branch in anger. He questioned everyone. One by one, the branch staff had to explain and show their roles and job descriptions. Those who couldn't were fired. Maybe, in the end, there was justice. But Beatrice? She was just grateful to be free. At least for now.